Mistrustful. Let's win.
With your host, Andrew Donaldson. This is Heard Tell.
Welcome back to Heard Tell. Okay, I got corrected on something, and he's got a problem. I said, come on and tell me to my face. Actually, we didn't say that. I just said, come talk to us because we like him. He's a good guy. He's returning to the show. Travis Nix, how are you, sir?
Good. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, he's at Georgetown Law. Good guy. Been on the program before. All right, let me set the stage with this. So let me just tell you what I said, and then we'll go from there. But we have the situation. The New York Attorney General, Letitia James, is suing Donald Trump and family. Now, we need to lay out a couple particulars here because she's the Attorney General of the state of New York. This is a civil suit. Very important to this conversation. Part of what she said, though, in her very lengthy 45 minutes worth of announcements, and I'm reading, this is from Ari Mebler, a well-known reporter on legal affairs. I'm quoting his quote here, just to be clear. We'll link to all this. Y'all read it yourselves. The New York Attorney General is citing former President Trump's unprecedented, which we can argue that some other time, invocation of the Fifth Amendment right not to incriminate himself in crimes as part of the evidence suggesting he committed crimes and knows he did. That's part of a longer thread, but that was the part I was commenting on. This is my direct quote. I fully believe Trump has all sorts of dirty money and shading dealings. I'm content for an investigation to play out and investigate those things. But in this particular argument, however it is used and whoever it is used against, I don't like it. It's hot garbage. And the people, especially elected judicial leaders, need to stop using it. You replied to me about how you can do this in a civil suit. So before we go any further, you are correct, by the way. You can do this. It's not illegal. Why can you do this in a civil suit and break down the Fifth Amendment privilege for folks so they understand what we're talking about here?
Yeah, so the Fifth Amendment right protects people from self-incrimination in criminal context only. So basically, if a cop arrests you and they want you to make a confession, you're allowed to assert your Fifth Amendment right and not talk to them, and you have a right to remain silent. But however, if you read the text of the Constitution, it's very clear that it only applies to criminal matters. And this has actually been litigated before the Supreme Court numerous times because people were trying to get it to also go to civil in the civil context when you're being deposed in a civil trial, which is what former President Trump was in this New York case. He was asked, and his sons and daughters were asked to take a deposition on his business practices, and they repeatedly asserted their Fifth Amendment right to not incriminate themselves. And the Supreme Court has ruled that in a case called Baxter in 1976, that you do not have a Fifth Amendment right in civil context because the text of the Constitution is clear. And when you invoke the Fifth Amendment right in a civil case, the judge or jury can make an inference that basically the question that you were asked, that they can make an inference about your dealings in that matter, an adverse inference to the person that asserted their right. So basically, in this case, when Trump asserted his Fifth Amendment right, the state of New York can make an adverse inference about what that means in the context of the civil lawsuit.
Right. So this is settled case law. There's no debate about legally you can do this. I don't like her doing it in this context, and I'll explain my thinking why, and you can respond to it. The litigation is for civil context. This is not Charlie Bob suing Rocky Doc over whatever happened in a civil court. This is the Attorney General of the state of New York. This is also the Attorney General. Things don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a sequence, who we've got lots of video briefly talking about how she's going to sue Donald Trump. When you're that person in that role, because, and I want to make this point really clear, she's the AG. She is not a prosecutor. She's a state AG. Those two things are very different things, although there's some overlapping power there. When you're the state AG and you've got that kind of political stuff on what's going to be a political case, and again, I'm not defending Donald Trump. If he's guilty, let's have the trial and get him guilty on it. I have no doubt there's probably some malfeasance there. But you're the sitting elected chief legal officer of the state of New York. I don't like this terminology. I don't like how it's used here. And because we have a legal system that is shot through of instances of people using their own rights against them as admissions of guilt. Am I wrong for having a flag and going, wait a minute, I don't like how this looks, even though legally it's okay to do it?
Yeah, I think that you can definitely have that view of that this does not look good, especially when we don't know what the end game is here. She very much likely wants to pursue criminal charges against Donald Trump. So Donald Trump is probably trying to protect himself from a future criminal case against him from the state of New York. So he's probably been advised by his attorneys that we're not too worried about this civil case right here. So we're going to assert our Fifth Amendment rights because we're more concerned about what happens down the road in a possible criminal case. So therefore, I think you're very right that this probably doesn't look good from her, but it's something that she has to do legally. Put this in her complaint, talk about it, because basically when Trump's going to file a motion to dismiss this civil lawsuit, and by her putting it in her complaint that he asserted her Fifth Amendment right, that basically immunes her complaint from being dismissed, as soon as Trump files his motion to dismiss, because in a motion to dismiss context, any questions of law and fact have to be are ruled in her favor because Trump would be filing the motion to dismiss. So basically, by her putting this in her complaint, which she did about 6 times, she mentions the Trumps asserting their Fifth Amendment rights, that basically immunes her complaint from being dismissed by a court. So that would move the lawsuit forward.
I think this is an important point because I feel like I've been saying this for a couple of years because every Trump story is, we've really got him this time, right? I keep telling people, if you really want to get Donald Trump, let's just be adults here. Yeah, it's not fair. You can say whatever you want about it. When you've got a politically charged thing, especially when it's somebody like Donald Trump, the facts on the ground just are, when you go to do a prosecution or a civil lawsuit or whatever the case may be, you've got to do it quicker and cleaner and more upright than anything else because it's going to have more scrutiny. That's just the facts on the ground. That's kind of true for any high-profile civil case or litigation in general. Is it not fair to say that we really should be paying attention? It's not a nothing to blow these things up when they announce them like this. There's a something to these sorts of things, isn't it, that need to be discussed?
Yeah, I think there's something that needs to be discussed. I'm not sure she's too confident, honestly, in her case because she referred it to the Department of Justice. And if you actually read the complaint, it's about 300 pages worth of accounting practices, which is going to be the most boring thing for a jury or a judge to sit through. And I'm not sure the state of New York has better accountants than former President Trump. So I think one of the reasons they are doing this and referring it to the Department of Justice is hopefully to bring this case out a little bit and get some better lawyers possibly on it at the federal level.
Yeah, Travis Nix joining us. Okay, now you are one of those people. You like stuff like that. You like reading through business law and things like this. Everybody knows that everybody pushes the tax code. They pushes their loan stuff. Everybody fudges a little bit. Where's the line between malfeasance and criminality when it comes to things like overvaluing your property for a loan or undervaluing property for tax? That's the kind of stuff we're talking about in this complaint, in this civil suit for the most part. Where's the line? I know legally that changes some for jurisdiction, but just generally speaking, so people can get their heads around it, what are you looking for when you're looking at stuff like this?
So in this case, there's federal accounting rules called GAAP that you have to follow when doing any type of financial disclosure. There's some fuzzy lines with GAAP, but they're pretty strict rules that accountants have to follow. Accountants are normally very conservative when doing valuations and making sure they're following GAAP. So basically, we're just looking, they're going to have to see whether or not any potential misuse of these accounting principles led to all these damages and led to $250 million worth of fraud that she's claiming the state of New York was defrauded out of. Shifting through the complaints, which I did for a little bit, that's going to be hard to prove. Like one of her examples, she said, Trump had a 10,000 square foot property that he claimed was 30,000 square feet. Well, even if that's true, that doesn't get you to $250 million worth of fraud. There's a lot of lines that need to be connected, and I'm not sure they're going to be willing or able to do that, especially assuming that President Trump's accountants have very strong paperwork on the procedures they followed and everything that they did, which I'm sure they do.
Yeah. One quick question before we let you go. There's been the accusations that this is a placeholding legal action, that she's just putting something with her name on it, pending something else coming down the road. We know there's DOJ referrals. We know there's other investigations into other aspects of the Trump organization, the Weisenberg stuff, which she actually referenced here. We know about the other things that Donald Trump is accused of. Does that feel like what this is? Do you feel like this is one of those things that kind of disappears in a year or two and gets buried in litigation, or do you see this getting seen out?
I think it's eventually going to go to trial and go before a judge or jury, whatever Donald Trump chooses, because I don't think President Trump is going to want to settle this case. It's not going to be dismissed by a judge because there's too many factual disputes on what are the proper procedures followed, what was actually done by his accountants. So unless she dismisses it, which I don't think she's going to do, this isn't going to go away without a judge's verdict, judge or jury's verdict.
How much exposure does Trump have here, do you think?
I think some of the remedies she's proposing are flatly just not based on law and possibly unconstitutional.
You're talking about that you'd be banned from doing business in the state ever again, which was almost ludicrous on its face, frankly. Even if he was convicted of it, I don't think you could do that. That kind of stuff you think's overshot.
Yeah, that's complete ridiculous. The $250 million we'll have to see. I mean, that would be what Trump and his organization, his kids, are potentially liable for. We'll see whether or not they have proof to get to that amount.
But the chance of winning the case is there.
It's possible. Yeah, it's very possible. It's not going to get dismissed. It's not going to go away. So it's probably a viable legal case, and we're just going to have to see where it goes. But yeah, it's not going to be dismissed in a month, within a year, anything like that. I just don't see it happening.
Yep. All right. Do what Travis did. Read this for yourself. We're going to get it posted up. We have the full press conference up at Ordinary-Times as well. And we'll keep bringing Travis back to talk about it because he's really good on stuff like this and smart. So when I pop off about something I shouldn't have said, he'll text me, correct me, and we'll come on and talk about it. Travis, let folks know where they can follow you until the next time I say something stupid on Twitter and you need to straighten me out.
Easiest way to follow me is on Twitter at tnix113. Thank you so much for having me on again.
Hey, good to see you again, buddy. We'll get you on again soon. Appreciate the time, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thanks, sir.